without further ado, to share what growing in Whole Foods looks like for brands in 2019 and beyond, please welcome Dan Epley, VP of Grocery at Whole Foods Market.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here to represent Whole Foods Market and actually a great team. You've heard lots of people talk today about how team really matters. And I have the privilege of working with great teams. I have 4 team members actually 5 with me today that hopefully you get to meet. Stephanie Truscott leads our breakfast and frozen team. She's here, along with David Lafferty, who leads our snacks and candy team. We have Lee Robinson, who leads our dairy and beverage team. And we have Anna Maria Fried, who leads our meals, baking, and essentials team. And then JK, who you heard from yesterday, that works on our candy and functional snacks team. And so I'm honored to be here and represent them. I hope I can answer some questions for you as I go through the presentation at the end. But I want to basically target this to people that want to get into Whole Foods. And I'm going to walk through a little bit about how we go to business, and how things actually haven't changed that much, and how they have changed a lot since Amazon's come on. And a lot of the changes were actually already in motion. So first off, I want to just walk you through our team. We really have a hybrid team. And the hybrid team makes up a global team and a regional team. And I want to talk about the local team first. This regional team has buyers and foragers. And the foragers are really key. If you're a new brand, you're probably going to come through the door in a forager. I've talked to 2 brands today that are launching at Whole Foods, one on Monday in the SoPac region, and another one sometime early next year. And they're coming to Whole Foods, they're locally produced, and they're coming through their forager. And foragers are key. We have 24 foragers out in all the regions that are looking for product. And what these teams do, they focus on what it matters to the region and in the metro. That's their focus. And really being locally relevant is really important to us. Over this last year, we've had 8 summits in our regions inviting all of our local suppliers to come in and talk to us, hear about how we go to market, and basically say that, hey, we're still looking for those local brands. We've had thousands of items that we've launched this year in local markets. We actually have a speed to market called Metro Innovation that allows the regions to bring in product as quickly as they find something, so they can have it on the shelf rather quickly once you introduce it to them if they want to do that. These regions are great at making sure they're relevant, and they're great at finding and incubating new brands. I'll tell you some stories later on today, but many of the brands that you know at Whole Foods Market, and some of the brands that have been talked about on the stage today, started because a forager found them. They started in a store, one store, or a few stores, and have grown up to become big brands that have been capital invested in them, have gone on to other places. And so they all started because a forager found them, or you found the forager. So this local is really important to who we are at Whole Foods Market. It hasn't changed with Amazon coming in. It's really important. We still have all of our regional structures in place, and added actually, that forager count almost doubled in the last year, making sure that we're relevant in the market. Secondarily, we have these regions, and by the way, if you're 3 brands or less, the regions manage you as a brand. So if you're in 3 or less, and when you go to more regions, then you come to the global team. The global team is made up of executive leaders or directors. The 4 I introduced to you before today are the grocery team. There's some for whole body and others as well. Category merchants, which JK is a category merchant, and we have several other category merchants. And then assistant category merchants that help as well. This team focuses on 4 or more regions. So as soon as you hit 4 regions, then the global team picks you up and begins to manage you within Whole Foods Market. And I'll go into a little bit more detail what that means down the road. These guys are really good at establishing the strategy for the brand. They look at the brand, they say this is the type of role that brand plays, and they lay out that strategy, and then we actually feed that strategy to all the regions. So we can say this is a category that is a destination for us, or maybe a convenience category, and the regions then know how to play within that category. They're great at developing new items. We do this all the time. I was talking to a supplier out in the hall earlier today, and they were talking about how a category merchant had really helped him focus in on how much protein needed to be in the item, the flavor profile, and how it was just doing phenomenally well. So the category merchants are experts at developing these new items, and we see that time after time. It's one of the things that they do very well and that they love to do. They're good at managing a global assortment. The majority of our assortment is actually global, and so they manage that total assortment. They determine what goes away and what stays, and that's a big part of their focus. And then they look for regional brands to grow. So they're always looking at what's happening in the regions, what's doing really well, and they'll basically, if the sales per point are doing really well, they'll pick those brands up and they'll take them to more regions, sometimes all 11, sometimes somewhere between that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that down the road as well. And they do a lot of work on managing transitions and resets. We call them rounds at Whole Foods Market, and you can look at our rounds. They usually align to months, and they're available on our calendars out there, and they spend a lot of time making sure that we're set up for that round. And then they do a lot of work on promotional strategies, making sure that determine when we're TPRs or temporary price reductions, or whether it's off shelf. They focus on what that strategy looks like. And then they're responsible for the P&L of the category. This is a new responsibility that's coming onto the team. It's lived in the regions for years and years, and this is actually one of the changes as we've gone to this hybrid structure, is this P&L is actually moving to the global team starting in January. There's lots of other people, though, that it takes to make this work, and this has been interesting. When I started at Whole Foods almost 4 years ago, there was probably 100-ish people doing all the things I'm going to talk to you about now, and now there's about 300 to 400 people, depending on how you do the count. And we have all these different teams that work with us. We have a merchandise presentation team. They're working on floor planning, assortment analytics, and planograms. And we do all those in Austin now, along with the space planner in each region that basically helps us with the local regions. Merchandise execution, we now reset in the stores. It used to be that you brought a product to Whole Foods Market, and you would hope that we would get it into over a period of time. It was kind of like a hope and a prayer that we get into all the stores. And now when we say we're going to execute it, we basically execute it within 2 weeks. And we've been able to, that's been a huge help to us. We also do promo audits from the execution team. We have a pricing team that helps us look at everyday pricing. They're looking at competitive intelligence and helping us work on that. We have a marketing team that is really customer facing, thinking about what we do with mailers. We have TV that we do run now that we haven't before. The signage in the stores, social, and other things like that. A promotional team that's really looking at our promotional effectiveness, so we become more sophisticated in how we run promotions. There was a time where we used to take every promotion that all of you would give us and just run them all, and now we're trying to be more strategic about what that looks like. We have an insights team that really helps us understand our consumer a lot better, and this helps us better in our assortments, making sure we're making the right decisions and really thinking about who our customers, where they shop, how much of their wallet do we get, what are they really weighing in with. And we have a project management process team that's helping us. I often talk about my job right now is basically looks like managing a several billion-dollar business while managing a startup, because that's kind of what it's like at Whole Foods right now as we build this new structure. Is we have all these processes we need to put into place. We haven't had tools because if you go back 3 years ago, all the work was done in each of the 11 regions. And that's all been moving to global where it makes sense, and then leaving what we need to leave in the regions so that we can be right for our customer. So these teams are really, really important to our process. And last, we have quality standards. This is a key fact for us. I think that there was a big fear that when Amazon came in, Whole Foods would change. Our quality standards would become different, and they haven't. In fact, we continue to elevate our quality standards. We're looking to enhance them. Think about how we continue to provide a difference and be at the tip of the spear and move forward. We've improved our quality standards on our seafood, our canned seafood. We have quality standards come out on household and cleaning and other things that we've done to improve and to actually be more authentic to our customers and what they're looking for. And we will continue to do that. And Amazon's very supportive of that. They see that's a differentiation factor for us. Now I want to talk about actually how a brand grows up at Whole Foods Market. And it starts with being discovered by the regional team, whether you find them or they find you. And it really starts with us with the solution. We don't have a lot of shelf space, and so we need to make sure that we're bringing to the customer what they're looking for, and we're solving for a need. Whether that be less sugar, more protein, or whatever they're looking for right now, how do we solve that in the different categories? And so it starts with this region team, and it's usually led by a forager buyer in the region. And what's unique about Whole Foods Market is we really are designed to help people grow up. And so this local relevance comes into play, but then there's this relationship that you have with the regional local team. What's interesting, I almost brought this today, a Ziploc bag, because a lot of product comes to Whole Foods the first time in a Ziploc. And it's like, hey, this is what we have for you. And what do you do with that? And we taste it and we go, that's amazing. And then we help people go through the process of packaging, distribution, sometimes where they make it. We help them think about their ingredients. and all those. Now, something that's really unique about Whole Foods Market is we really care about everything that goes into the product and what it looks like, and we help suppliers do that. And that's one of the things that really is key for us. We'll actually take on product, and when it comes in locally, we don't expect it to perform at the average of the category. We give it time to grow up, and that's key for us. And we actually, it's interesting, products iterate. The ingredients might change, the packaging might change. Many times, our suppliers are the ones in the stores demoing with our customers, and they're hearing what the customers say. They like this, they don't like that. They're talking to our team members, and you basically can learn and grow up. Your product can change and iterate so that as it grows, it gets better and better, and its chances of success increase the more you listen. And so the team does a lot of this. I call it consulting, whether it be packaging, distribution, ingredients, really how to go to market. Because when you come with a Ziploc bag, you may not know how to do what comes next. And we can help you do that in lots of different ways. So the regional teams do all of this. And then they say, okay, we're going to bring you in. So you have initial placement. You may start one store or a metro. That's usually how we start. One of the people I talked to today, I didn't know it all about, is starting in 40 stores in SOPAC on Monday. Another one starting in certain stores in a region in the Mid-Atlantic next year. Then you start to sell your product. And what I think about is, I call it personal marketing, because a lot of the times you guys start out, it's sweat equity. A lot of the brands, you guys talked about Justin's. Well, Justin's he was out selling it himself. Caitlin was selling it herself. She came and actually talked to my team, and she showed us the picture of her kitchen and the stove that she couldn't even regulate. And she talked about how she sold her car so she'd have extra cash to fund what she did. And so if you're out there, a lot of brands start by selling themselves, basically sweat equity, making a difference out there and selling it, demoing, going to maybe 3 stores in a day. And so this is how it starts for a lot of people. And then this incubation time comes where we basically iterate, and you learn and you grow. You get better and better over time. And then you begin to build the velocity. And that velocity then begins to matter and says, oh, well, maybe you should go into more stores, or what does that look like? Maybe you should actually add more flavors, or maybe there's a time where you actually begin to look at more categories. So this is how you start out. And then you basically, the exposure increases. Then you begin to think about sales per store per week, and this is really how we evaluate all the different products. The global team is looking at the sales per store per week by store to say, what's happening here? Is it selling above the category average or not? And the regions are looking at that. In fact, I was talking to a supplier earlier today, and they said, boy, I'm having a hard time getting noticed by the regional team. And I can tell you, usually that means that your brand is probably not performing at the category average. And so they're looking at what's bubbling up and doing well. And I'd encourage you to think about, how do you build that up? How do you demo more? What do you need to change to your product? How does the store need to know more about that? So you build that velocity. Then we begin to look at assessment of how do you increase capability for manufacturing and distribution. Because you may not be able to make it in your kitchen anymore, because that's where sometimes it starts. Or wherever you're co-packing, you may need something different. Your distributor may need to be changed a little bit. Then we begin to talk about, what does more stores look like? Maybe it went from one store to a metro, and then we may look at a full region. And as you do that, then there's more selling and personal marketing. How do you go from your little metro maybe, that is 3 or 4 stores, to 30 or 40? And how do you begin to do that? What does that look like? Your social media may become more important. And then you continue to learn. Your product is still changing at this point usually. You're still adding things. They may be little, but you're iterating still. And that matters a lot. And then you need to begin broad-based marketing. And this is actually where a lot of brands we find fall down, is that they're very good. They can go out and sell their product themselves, but how do you broaden that out? How do you begin to build your brand beyond who you are and get that white space out there and more clearly to the customer? And so that's really important. And then you're considering consulting from the region. They're helping you along the way. And this happens all the time. This is what we're really good at. And then you think about those line extensions. This is where you might get some more shelf space. Maybe another flavor makes sense because you're doing really well. Maybe it's another category that's on what we call the shoulders of the category you're playing in. And this is where the region might direct you and say, maybe you should look at what that item. We talked about Caitlin a little bit, and I'll talk more about her later, but she started with one product and then really found the home run in another area, and then her brand extended out from there. And then you move to additional regions. It might be an adjacent region. It might be a region that has similar characteristics as the region that you're in. From there, this is when the global team is monitoring, so they're watching all the time. And there are times where the global team will like pick it up and take it really quickly, and other times they're just watching and saying, I'm going to see what happens next when it goes from 1 to 2 regions. So let's talk about growing from small to big, and it's harder than it looks. Every one of you, let's say, I want to be in every Whole Foods tomorrow, right? Anybody not want that? But it is exciting and it's really hard. And it sometimes actually could be the worst thing that we could do is take you to all of our stores at one time. Because what you did to get to 5 or 10 stores or even 40 stores may not get you to 475 stores. And so you have to think differently. There's dynamic changes that come with all this increased distribution, and here's just a few of them. Expenses go up. It gets more expensive as you broaden out. You can't do all the things that you were doing on your own before. Manufacturing becomes, do you have just one place you're manufacturing? Does it need to change? Do your run times, do you need longer? All the things that happen to manufacturing. How are you going to market outside wherever you're at now, and how do you get bigger? What does that look like? Your distribution, you may be with a local distributor, but how do you move to UNFI for us? And what does that look like? That's very different. They have things called chargebacks and things like that you got to figure out and know what that looks like. They have fees that you have to think about. You need extra support to manage chargebacks and all the different things that happen out there that when you're in a region are really simple. The other thing that we do is when you're in a region, there's some fees that we actually don't apply against a brand because we're giving the brand time to breathe and grow up. But as you grow to more regions, those fees come into play because you're competing in space, and we're actually taking space away from other things that are playing to bring you in. And so that begins to matter. And then guess what? Other people begin to notice what you're doing. This is a big factor. And so a big brand might be out there trying to knock you off. Or another small brand might be trying to get you. Or maybe as you actually broaden across the country, you may run into another brand that's actually in another metro that's doing really well. So you have to think more about how you're going to compete outside of where you're at. So all these things make it harder. And so we think about that and how to grow you up and help you. And in some cases, by the way, you don't need to grow up. We have some brands that stay in a metro, and they will only be in the metro. They want to be small. They want to be artisan and batch. And that's okay too. We have some brands that will never be beyond a metro or a region or two. And we have some brands that actually we take global and then we bring them back to where they're relevant because that's where they really resonate, and they don't play well globally, but they play well in 1 or 2 regions because the customer resonates with their brand there. And that's okay. We can do that, and we do that a lot. So now going to global. What happens to global growth? So the global team's monitoring the sales per store all the time. And sometimes we'll take a brand, and I'll tell you some stories coming up in a few minutes. We'll go from 1 region to 11 all at one time. And sometimes we'll go to 1 to 4, 1 to 7. It just depends on where you're at and what makes sense. We assess the opportunity in the categories, what we do. We look at what that looks like. What's the white space? Does it make sense globally or not? We talk about your manufacturing. We think about your ability to work with UNFI, because for us, as you grow out, eventually, at some point, that usually is a given for us if you're going to go across all of our regions. You got to think about financial support for things like free fill, distribution, promotion, and demos. And all these things need to be built in and have the support to do that. And then you got to think about all these stores, because you could go to 487 stores. Our stores are really productive, and the volume could be more than you could handle. And really bad thing is if you come in and you can't support all of that, that's a challenge for both of us, and so we have to really think about that. And hopefully we actually set you up for success so you're ready for every step, so when you get there, we're good to go. And then the vision, what's next for your brand? What are you thinking about your brand? Are you one item, or do you want your brand to become something over time? Perfect Bar talked about how he became Perfect Snacks and the platform he wanted to build over time. So what is that? What does your brand look like? What's next? And what are we looking to invest in? So here's the thing, it's working for us. It's working really, really well. We're picking up share. If you have access to share reports, you'd see that we're picking up share in the market, almost in almost all of the categories. Our core assortments are stronger than they've ever been. We're supporting local in an amazing way. So one of the things that happened is we brought in Amazon and we talked about Prime as an offer. Our local signage went down a little bit, and we're actually amping that back up. And if you go in stores, you'll see lots of signs calling out local with pictures of people that actually produce that product. Maybe your pictures are on there, because local is really important, so it's working well there. We're elevating lots of brands from regional to global. This is happening almost in every round for us. So brands are getting into more regions all the time. And overall, we have great strength in sales. Our business is really good. So this strategy is working really well. I'm really excited about it. So here's some examples for you. And I got 4 examples I want to just give you really quick. Siggy's is one of those. Siggy started in the Northeast in just a few stores. Over time, Siggy's grew up to the whole region in the Northeast and then went eventually across the whole U.S. and eventually was acquired. We still know Siggy and talk to him today. Last year I was traveling with him in France and we were looking at different product. He's still involved in the product, but has done a great job. So this is a brand that grew up from his kitchen, literally in New York, to our stores. We talked about, you've heard Simple Mills, we've talked about it a few times. Caitlin started out in one store in North Carolina and grew up, and now she's in all of our stores, growing at great numbers, continue to grow into new categories and doing extremely well. She came and talked to our team not too long ago, and it was just fun to hear her story and how she did it. Probably no different than how some of you are doing it. Malk is a new interesting product. August of Vega in Houston needed to solve a problem, and so she developed this product for her family, and she did really well in I think 3 or 4 stores in Houston, and now is globally with us. And a new brand that we just rolled out last year is Dilceza. It started in the Mid-Atlantic, Washington, D.C., and with scoop shops, went to the Mid-Atlantic region and went from 1 region to 11 regions all at one time. They had the manufacturing to do it, and the brand's doing extremely well for us. So your brand could be the same story as one of these brands in the future. And the question that I get asked lots of times is, why Whole Foods Market? We have a customer that's really amazing. They're explorers. Not only do they try new, but they love new. So it's key for them. They want quality and they want experience. In the natural and organic channel, that's what we give them time after time. They're looking for what's next, and we continue to find that. And that white space, as you guys bring that product, our customers love it. We have a great history. Our track record, I'm pretty confident that I can say we've developed more brands in the natural organic channel than anyone else. And we continue to do that. And we have the support structure to do it. We have the forager that can do that in 1 store, the buyer that can help you with 40 stores, and the team member that can help you with 487 stores. So we have the right structure in place with an amazing team that just continues to look for differentiation from the stores to the regions, all the way up to the global team. They love this. This is what they're all about, is really growing up, finding the right product and helping brands grow up. It's the DNA that has them just be excited about coming to their job every day. I'm going fast because time is going on well, but I thought I'd just try to throw a few things. This is my kitchen sink slide, okay? So these are things that you might want to ask me that aren't in that deck. Amazon, what about Amazon? I would tell you that Amazon has been very protective of us. They said, keep going where you're going. Stay on your strategy. Right now, we work pretty much exclusively. We have small ties to Amazon's merchandising team. We don't, as you basically talk to us, the pathway to Amazon is not through us today. In the future, I think that will happen, but that's not happening yet. So really, as you come and talk to us, you're really selling to Whole Foods Market today, not to Whole Foods Market, then to Amazon through us. I think over time that may change, but today it's just Whole Foods Market. So that's really how it works. Merchandising presentation, I get this all the time, like, why is my product on the bottom shelf in this store and on the top shelf in this store and eye level here? Presentation really lives in the regions. We really leave that to the regions to manage today. In time that may change, but right now the regions decide how the product gets merchandised for every category. And you may even see it change from one store to the next store. And so you could talk to any of the team members here and they'd say, how do I get my product moved around? The answer is, it's going to live where the region wants it to live. And so that's where it's at today. Local and regional, I think I've told you enough about local and regional, but local is still really important to us. And UNFI is our partner. We're going to continue to work with UNFI. They are a key partner. They're key to our distribution strategy. They do most of our distribution, and so lots of times people ask, are you going to change that? They're a partner who we work with. If you're local, you may be able to work with smaller distributors, but as you go global, UNFI will be a player for us. That's all that I have before Carol drills me with questions that you guys give her. So hopefully you're easy on me.
Come take a seat. So I do want to remind you guys, if you look at the bottom of your agendas, you can send in your questions. There's a phone number. You can email ask@nosh.com or tweet with the hashtag NoshLive, and maybe you'll hear your question on stage. So, you mentioned things you're going to get asked about. I got one. How about CBD?
So CBD is really interesting. We are staying away from CBD right now. It's not legal, and we know that we are a big target, and so we're just staying away right now. When things become legal, then we'll jump in at the right level.
Great. Well, you talked a lot about how this new path impacts brands. How did it impact you and your team, and kind of how did you guide the grocery department through this?
Well, they guided me a lot, actually, to tell you the truth. But when I started 4 years ago, we had 5 people on the grocery team, and now we have 30 on the global team. And we had to establish all these processes, and we had to make sure that we were staying true to who we are authentically as Whole Foods Market. And that was key for us because we wanted to still bring the customer the same great experience we brought them over all these years. And so we've been able to do that, and the customers have responded in a great way. So it's listening to customers. It's actually listening to our regions. They're really key to us. And then watching the results, and the results are great, so it's working.
So one of the questions we got was that Whole Foods was always a really wonderful place for product discovery. And now with many consumers moving to Prime Now shopping, how do you encourage brands still create that moment of discovery with consumers when they're kind of not actually browsing a physical aisle?
So items that are selling in our stores can still be legal through or set up for Amazon Prime Now. Customers are still coming in and engaging. They aren't doing all their purchasing through Amazon Prime Now. They still engage in the store, especially on the fresh products. And so demoing is probably the biggest thing that you can do, is make sure you're there, that you're demoing your product to our customers. They love to hear your stories, and it resonates with them. The more authentic you are, the more they actually become a supporter of you and your brand, even more than just your product. And that's really what's fun about it.
And a lot of the questions were also around the ratio. So what's the ratio of local to global? Maybe not exact numbers, but just kind of understanding, as well as the ratio of kind of, mainstream basket builders versus the cutting edge products that Whole Foods is kind of known for.
What's really amazing is we actually do local differently by region. And so I'll give you an example. In Northern California, there's a lot of dairy. And so we have a lot more local dairy in Northern California. If you go to Denver, there's not a lot of dairy there. And so our local in Denver is much less. So we're actually changing our local part of the assortment up and down based on what category you're on and what region you're in. And so it's not really a set number. It varies a lot. And as we look at the product that we're bringing in, it actually is the category merchants are looking at assessing the opportunity for each category and the item that comes in, what you guys bring to us, and determining what we elevate and what we take out. And so that's an ongoing process that happens every day for us. In some categories we move faster than others, but it depends on what our suppliers bring us.
And one of the topics that came up in our retailer breakout yesterday was how you guys have made some really strong bets around certain trends, like keto, for example. How are you determining what trends you kind of want to focus on in that assortment?
So the customer data is really essential for us. The other thing that's happening is our regions are experimenting with so many different brands that really sets a great laboratory for us to find those things and then bring them up quickly. Our category merchants are amazing at actually listening to what you guys bring to us, understanding what's happening from the consumer side, reading all of that data, and we have enough brands and variation that we can find those hot spots and then we can quickly grow them up. So we have a strong keto set right now that's doing extremely well for us. We saw that a long time ago. That's not really new to us. And because we're already out in front of it, we're able to add to that and then think about what's next.
And another question that came in was about, your path that you mentioned. You said getting into Whole Foods isn't a path to Amazon. But what about the reverse? So if you're performing really well on Amazon, does that help you when you're pitching to Whole Foods?
Not a lot. We'll look at that for sure. But the Amazon experience is very different than the Whole Foods experience. And so the founder story is important to us. And so we'll look at the Amazon information. It's all a factor in deciding that. It doesn't mean that we don't discount it. Everything goes into the decision to say what's the best thing to step forward. We found some things that did start at Amazon that we do carry and do well with. Most started in our regions, actually smaller than Amazon.
And one of the most important questions we got for a lot of these local brands is, how do they find their foragers?
So the foragers, we actually have a way that you can go into Whole Foods Market and see through our supplier portal that you can go in and find their names. But if you call the local region offices, they'll actually tell you. If you go to a store, they'll tell you the foragers are as well. And they're anxious and looking for new brands. So that's all they do. 24 foragers out there across the U.S. trying to find what you're bringing to market, what's next, and good for them.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I know you'll be hanging around for more specific questions as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.